covering the first so-called reality TV president, Donald Trump. His campaign tactics were a matter of media fascination, both for the good and the bad. And many critics of Mr. Trump are now blaming the mainstream media, at least in part, for failing to accurately cover Trump's unconventional campaign. But can the old rules of political coverage keep up with Donald Trump, who uses his Twitter account and impromptu phone interviews to speak directly to the electorate and bypassing the mainstream media? My first guest has written about this topic and recently accused the press of media malpractice in its 2016 election coverage. She is Katrina Heuvel, editor and publisher of The Nation, political commentator. She joins me from New York. Katrina, in a piece that appeared in The Nation and The Washington Post, you said, the most pressing issues confronting the American people have been overshadowed by outrageous headlines, fake scandals, fake news, and shameful coverage of the one-man circus that is Donald Trump. More than in any other recent election, the role of the media itself has become a central, consuming issue of the campaign. How did this happen?
Well, there are a variety of reasons, Larry. Thank you for having me on. I do think we saw media malpractice 2016, and I hope we see something different in 2017 as we move forward. I think this was a rewrite the rules election for all institutions in this country. I think the media needs to return to its old values, truth-telling, holding the powerful accountable across the political spectrum, watchdog, not lapdog. Those are values that I think we saw fail us in this election. Partly, Larry, what's interesting is that in the beginning, as you recall, those first months of the Trump campaign, a lot of TV, which is where so many millions of Americans get their news, gave unfiltered coverage, mass hours of coverage. I think it's estimated Donald Trump got $5 billion in free media coverage. What didn't get coverage were the issues. So you had this tweeting reality king dominate the news, distort coverage of issues. And issues, by the way, Larry, the nightly news broadcast, this Tyndall report just came out, said covered 30 minutes of issues in the whole campaign of 2016 on their nightly news broadcasts. So I think we need to think hard about how we move forward covering Donald Trump. I'd say one thing is that the media doesn't need to cover every single one of his tweets. They become distractions, deflections, and deformations of our political discourse and discussion. But we need to think hard about getting a spine. I thought the meeting that Donald Trump had with CEO, media execs, and some major anchors was a bad sign, Larry, moving forward. I mean, they were given access, but it was off the record. The media should be adversarial, should be questioning and skeptical. As one media critic said, this is time to scrutinize, not normalize. So I think there are a lot of rules.
Couldn't media say, well, Donald Trump, did we make him or did he make the news? In other words, we were covering what the public wanted to see.
I think it was, I don't think that one can say that, Larry, because I think the obscenely excessive coverage of Donald Trump in those first months had a lot to do with the revenue clickbait stuff. Listen, the media didn't create Donald Trump. They abetted his rise. There are serious, legitimate issues of economic pain, of identity, of nationalist chauvinism that made Donald Trump a president-elect of this country. But the media absolutely gave him excessive coverage. And let's not forget, there's another kind of populism in this country. Bernie Sanders, who the nation endorsed, speaks of a populism of solidarity, of inclusiveness, of respecting working men and women. And his coverage in those first months, when his rallies were almost the same size, Larry, he was marginalized. He was treated as a fringe candidate until, he began to win a lot of states and he showed his moxie. So I think there is a kind of, as I said earlier, there's a news that treats news as entertainment and I'm not all spinach. Listen, I read Us Weekly before I go to bed a lot of nights, but you gotta mix it up. You gotta and make sure that citizens of this country are not mere spectators at a reality show, but that they are engaged in a politics. And the lack of coverage of real issues, of what means something to people in communities around this country, I think was deformed because of the excessive coverage of Donald Trump and the coverage of character. And both campaigns, by the way, Hillary Clinton's and Donald Trump's, ended up making it really a campaign of character, who's fit, who's not fit. And climate crisis, for example, existential crisis of our time, was never raised at a debate, barely mentioned in the campaign.
Couple of other things. On Sunday, Donald Trump tweeted, in addition to winning the Electoral College in a landslide, I won the popular vote if you deduct the millions of people who voted illegally. Do you know what that's about?
Yeah, I know what it's about. We have one of the great voting rights correspondents in America, Ari Berman. Ari Berman wrote this morning that what Donald Trump is doing is basically arguing for more voter suppression. One of the issues that was not covered in this election, Larry, this was the first election in 50 years without the full protection of the Voting Rights Act. 15 states have taken on new voter suppression tactics since 2012. Donald Trump won the Electoral College vote. I may be heretical here, but I'm not sure about these recount efforts. It's not Florida 2000 where it was one state. Hillary Clinton would need to show that she won in 3 states in order to take back the majority in the Electoral College. I think citizens in this country need to fight to end the Electoral College, which was formed in slavery to repress popular will. And I think we need to fight hard against Trump's attempt to suppress the votes, which the Republican Party, not just Donald Trump, has been a champion of. Voting rights, last I checked, Larry, was not a left or right issue. It is a pro-democracy, small d democracy issue. And what he's doing is, I think, very dangerous and inciting others to do more to suppress votes and not lead to more turnout and have more participatory democracy. Our political system is broken already. We need to find ways to reform it, not allow a Donald Trump to deform it even more with these endless tweets.
Is there a candidate, possible candidate for Secretary of State that Katrina vanden Heuvel would favor?
Tulsi Gabbard. Tulsi Gabbard is a very interesting congresswoman from Hawaii who met with Donald Trump 10 days or so ago. She's someone who believes, as Trump does, that we need better relations with Russia. It's not pro-Putin or pro-Kremlin. It's sober realism to argue we need a partnership with Russia. She believes we should work with Russia to defeat ISIS in Syria. And she's anti-interventionist. She believes the United States has become too much a policeman of the world. She's opposed to regime change as policy. I don't see Donald Trump picking her. But if he picks someone like John Bolton, who was the architect of the Iraq War, a great disaster for this nation, or Giuliani, who would, I think, bring law and order of a brutal kind to the world. Mitt Romney's strange. Mitt Romney, you know, is more the establishment who took on Donald Trump and now back in the tent, so to speak. But he said that Russia in 2012 was the greatest geostrategic threat to the United States. I think that's wrong, and I think Donald Trump, in an incoherent, fitful way, is trying to start what is called détente with Russia.
Katrina, always good seeing you. By the way,
Thank you.
Our next topic is the Dakota Access pipeline. Do you know why quickly it's not getting wider coverage?
It's a very good question, Larry. I think it goes back to what we were talking about. This is a serious issue. It's the largest Native American mobilization in 40 years. It brings together the history of broken treaties, environmental justice, and state-sanctioned theft of land. But it's not, I think our media has a hard time covering movements and covering mobilization. It's been brutal too, Larry. I mean, the images of police with water hoses and dogs. But let us continue media as we can to cover dissent, to cover mobilization, to cover people power, trying to recover their land and keep our country whole. But it's media attention needs to be paid. It needs to be paid. And I would say let's pay less attention to Donald Trump's tweets and far more to places like Standing Rock, where history is being made and people power is being shown.
Always good talking with you, Katrina. Thanks so much. For the latest from Katrina vanden Heuvel, check out thenation.com or follow her on Twitter @KatrinaNation.